right, hey everybody, it's Jonny Torres. Thank you so much for joining us. We're only about an hour late. Hey, but who's counting, right? Thank you so much for watching the most important and relevant podcast in politics. This is the Yard Sign, coming to you every Monday night. We appreciate you for watching. Still kind of figuring out a new setup here. Hopefully we'll be back in a new space soon so we can all be under the same roof. Jonny Torres with you as always, and as expected, we've got lots of plenty to talk about, especially since we took last week off to celebrate the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll talk a little bit about that as our super shenanigans topic of the day. And as you can see, impeachment for all. We've got, of course, the Trump impeachment to talk about. Now a potential recall or impeachment of Governor Newsom in California and Governor Cuomo in New York. So the big three states all under fire in one way or another. Digital exile, as more and more conservatives continue to be censored and deplatformed from Facebook and Twitter. Where are they going? We'll give you an update on Parler, also a new platform called Clubhouse, and we'll discuss a little bit about where exactly do conservatives have to go when it comes to using digital platforms as a platform to exercise their free speech and promote their campaigns and their issues and their agendas. Biden versus Desantis. You may have heard President Biden saying that he may put travel restrictions on people traveling to and from the state of Florida. Of course, as you might have expected, that got ugly really quick as DeSantis is getting pretty aggressive, getting pretty bullish, and pushing back on that. And then, as I mentioned, Tampa Bay was just partying it out for the past week. We'll talk a little bit about not only the Super Bowl, but of course all the festivities and everything that took place thereafter. Okay, let's go ahead and get into today's panel. We've got some new faces for you, which I'm excited about, and one that, I'm not so excited. No, I'm just kidding. Anibal Cabrera joins us as always. We've also got Brock Mikosky joining us. He's a political consultant, and among many other talents. And then Andrew Cherry as well, who's a Republican conservative activist here in Tampa Bay, been involved for a long time as well. Right now, hold on a second. Let me do the gallery view so we can get everybody in the screen there. There we go. Fellas, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, hang on one second. I've got to switch back. There we go. It's great to see you guys. Everybody looking pretty good, well lit, and hopefully we'll get some good audio here from all of you. Let's go ahead and start off with the first topic of the day, which, again, not surprisingly, we are seeing now Governor Newsom under attack because he's pretty much shut down his entire state for almost a year now. And then Governor Cuomo is under fire for putting his state basically under peril because of coronavirus and lying about the number of victims that the state of New York has had in coronavirus. Obviously, President Trump coming off of a second acquittal from the impeachment hearings in D.C. Not a lot of fireworks because the outcome was pretty much what we expected, right, guys? I was going to say, I hope you're doing more than nodding. I mean, I'm like... Yeah, Andrew.
he disses the former president. And I think we all got the results that we expected.
I think the other thing too. Go ahead, John.
Again, thank you to everybody for watching the Yard Sign. Jonny Torres here with you. We are just working out a few kinks here on the audio side, but we're talking about impeachments for all. Of course, Donald Trump's got acquitted. Now, when we kind of turn the page over to what we're seeing happening in California, let's start with Newsom. Brock, you were actually spending some time in California during this pandemic. Give us an idea of kind of what you saw, what you heard, from business owners being out that way, and do you think this recall might work?
Well, I think they're going to recall him. Whether or not, it's a bigger question as to whether or not in a state the size of California they can actively, take him out of office. I was out there right before I guess it was December, the re-shutdown, if you will. It was kind of fascinating. We went to a couple of restaurants where they had forced them to have dining outside. They had forced them, in some cases, to have tents in the parking lot and heaters and the infrastructure that goes along with, opening up an outdoor restaurant. And then, a week after we got there, they shut down indoor and outdoor dining, literally shutting down restaurants to anything but takeout. Really with no explanation. He kind of randomly divided the state into regions and pegged the open and closed to ICU beds, all things that have no basis in science whatsoever. We've seen that, unfortunately, public health people don't seem to have a real grasp on what they're telling us at any given point. Granted, they're learning as everyone else is learning, but I think you start to see this massive distrust when people, continue to get shut down, are told they can't work, and then there was a massive thing in LA County when we were there that they worked really hard to get every restaurant worker who lost their job $800, which I'm sure those people were happy for the $800, but I'm not sure how they're going to pay the rest of their probably exorbitant Los Angeles rent. That was a one-time payment from the county, kind of a take it or leave it scenario. So, do I think that he would? Do I think that he'll be recalled? Yeah, I think there's enough anger. Gavin Newsom, starting with the French Laundry debacle, followed by just a complete, lack of grasp on the situation. So, I'd be really, really shocked to see him taken out of office. But heck, it's politics in California, so I'm just curious to see, along with apparently the mayor of San Diego and Rick Grinnell. I'm waiting to see which other B level, maybe Scott Baio will run, or a couple of, maybe Pamela Anderson if she still lives in California. Whatever, but it's going to be an interesting, clown show there.
I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen is I don't think we're going to see a repeat of 2003. I do agree with Brock that we will see the Republicans get themselves together to actually do the recount. They're looking to pull in 2 million cards, allowing them to do the recount because they know they're going to lose at least 500,000, especially with the Democrats in regards to counting the votes for the recount. Do I think the party will get together beforehand to be able to pick someone that will actually unite the party and get everyone moving together? I don't think so. This hasn't been done since 2003, and that was with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which had a name recognition off the roof. So I don't see Pamela Anderson jumping in. I think Rick Grinnell might have a pretty decent chance. But again, the way that, I think, Brock, you could probably confirm this, the guerrilla election cycle, the way the guerrilla elections are there, it's going to be very interesting. If you have more than one Republican on the ticket, they're probably going to lose it.
I think we lost. I think Republicans lost California a long time ago. I think Arnold was probably the last major player with name recognition in the state.
Well, there is one candidate out there right now. The question is if he can get through some sort of primary, because he is a bit of a moderate Republican. I mean, there's a former mayor of San Diego, in fact, the last Republican mayor named Kevin Faulconer, who I know has a good team, has some name ID in one of the largest cities in the state. Raised $1 million in his first week because he did essentially already open a committee on the off chance they do recall Gavin Newsom. So he seems to be putting the right kind of operation in place. Let me maybe amend my previous conversation. I think that there is a chance that a Republican could win the recall, but I think at the next regular election we probably get taken out again. The electorate is just different in a recall. It's the only thing on the ballot. It's expensive. People are generally really fatigued by the amount of bruising political advertisement that they see on an everyday basis. So a lot of people stay home. So is it possible? I think it's probably better than possible, but I wouldn't give it probable. But Kevin Faulconer and Rick Grinnell are really the only two names that have even really been bantied about at this point in time.
Well, and so let's go ahead and then shift focus over to New York, where we're hearing Governor Cuomo may also be under fire for basically committing fraud, and lying to the public about the number of casualties, especially when, he was the first to really order a directive that cost many, many lives in New York City, and now it's coming out that the numbers were even worse than we knew about. And so, obviously, I think politically, not that I expect Republicans to have any kind of a chance there, but you're starting to see, let's say, even for New York City mayor, you're starting to see some more moderate or independent type people, like Andrew Yang, who's making a run for New York City mayor and has, I think, a double-digit advantage right now over anybody else running. Could we see a more moderate New York governor step up to the plate? And will the recall or the impeachment of Governor Cuomo be successful?
That is a whole beast unto itself in regards to how this actually came about. It's not the Republicans that are going to be the ones that take out Cuomo. It's going to be the Democrats that take out Cuomo in Albany. And from what we hear, what's happening in the state capitol is that the way Cuomo has been running the state, he hasn't been running it as a governor. He's been running it as a dictator. They are still in emergency powers, giving him a lot of leeway, which is why we're in the position we are in as a New York residents when it came to the nursing home situation, and how they were purposely holding back the numbers of individuals dying in nursing homes compared to dying in hospitals to ensure that information was not used against them with Trump during the summer. And that's where the problem lies, and where people are starting to you see the cracks in the foundation of Cuomo's ability to run that state appropriately. It was done on a call and basically doing a mea culpa when it comes to the Democrat leadership inside the state of New York. You're going to see it really blossom now, because the person that brought it out was the AG of New York, who was a Democrat who ran with Cuomo's support. So this is really coming from the inside out, and I think people are tired of Cuomo. He's been there for quite some time now, and people do not like how chummy he was this entire time. He won an Emmy, for crying out loud, for his news coverage of how he was handling the epidemic, and then he wrote a book, I can't even say the word. How ridiculous he is to have the balls to write a book about the pandemic and accept an award for his broadcasting. And I really hope this all comes and blows up in his face. This is a good sign to show that his political dynasty and career is almost completely over.
Well, he's in real trouble. I just hope that the Republicans, who are severely outnumbered in New York in the legislature, can manage to find it within themselves to step out of the way and allow the Democrat-on-Democrat violence that's going to commence on this. There's no insurance that we will step out of the way and allow what looks like it will happen to happen. But he's in a real problem. I mean, imagine. I hate the whataboutism, but imagine if Governor Ron DeSantis misreported the deaths of seniors in nursing homes by 50% intentionally.
Oh yeah, there would be a national campaign right now calling for his removal.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, they might have just sent the federal agents to his house just directly to the governor's mansion. I mean, I overstate that, but that's the sort of that's the way this would be covered. Now, the fact that one, non-conservative media is covering this, two, that the real uproar is coming from the Democrats in the state assembly. I mean, he's in real trouble, and quite frankly, now that the DOJ is involved under a Democratic administration, I mean, his biggest problems might not be impeachment at this point in time.
Andrew, any thoughts?
Not really. Not really. No, my thoughts. I'll say this, guys. My thoughts, are that it's interesting. I feel like that Republicans we don't know how to. We don't really know how to promote ourselves properly. I think that our ideology, everything. I mean, here we have DeSantis, who has the best numbers of pretty much any state in the United States. More people are moving from New York City to Florida. It's something like 450 people a day move from the New York area to here. I mean, I'm a real estate broker for a living, so I'm freaking enjoying that. People are leaving it. I think it's just going to implode, and the numbers back that. Like, people are leaving New York. Florida's growing, Miami's growing, this area is growing. Great, So it's kind of like Adam Smith, the Economist or whatever. The free market will eventually prevail, and DeSantis has made a lot of good moves, which have really promoted Florida. And personally, honestly, deep down inside, let the pandemic continue for another 9 months. It's really good for my business. Keep the rest of the United States shut down. Let's continue the pandemic, and let's everybody just come on to Florida, where it's a really good time, and where we're partying in the streets, taking off our mask, and our economy is freaking phenomenal.
It's become a thing where you are watching the media elite really go after Florida and even Texas and other Republican states that have governors that are doing what's counter to what the rest of the country is doing. And so you see in New York, where the media darling of Cuomo was being interviewed by his brother on CNN every single weekend, was giving such cushy interviews, and no one was hitting him in regards to this. And then for him to say, what does it matter? People die. They already died. That's not the point. The point is that the reason why this is such a scandal is, one, your numbers were held up inappropriately because of political posturing, and two, it was your particular policy that other states adopted, which would require nursing homes to take back sick elderly individuals back into long-term care facilities, where then the virus went out and spread throughout the entire facility. Again, the reason why Florida is doing so well, I will have to say, is because our number one approach to this was to make sure that anyone that was over the age of 65 or older was protected. Those buildings and those long-term facilities were locked down as soon as we realized that 85% of those that were dying were over the age of 65 in long-term care facilities. And what did Cuomo do? He sent people back into them because they were afraid they were going to run out of beds. Even though they were changed, the Jade Center in New York City was changed into a hospital, and they had a ship on their way. The Trump administration gave them all the tools they needed to ensure they wouldn't have this issue, but because the way New York is run, an emergency system, and gave all that power to the governor was the one issuing policies that resulted in people dying.
Yeah, I wonder, I haven't looked this up, but what are the statistics, like people above the age of 65 living in New York versus people over the age of 65 living in Florida? I have not looked this up at all, but I know there are we have a huge retirement population here in Florida, and I think that overall, and we've lost a lot of people. I'm very sad for that. I lost most of my family, actually, to COVID. But that being said, it is a very real thing. But I think that we fared better as a state. We lost less people than people in New York. And I would like to see the numbers. How many people did Florida lose above the age 65? What percentage did we lose versus what percentage did New York lose? And I think that Florida did a lot better. I mean, we handled the situation better.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, thank you again for joining us today. Brock Mikosky, Andrew Cherry, and Anibal Cabrera. This is the Yard Sign. We appreciate you for watching. Again, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, especially on all our Tech Overlord platforms that you can find the show on. Google, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Audible, and more. All right. So, you can take us wherever you want. Again, the audio version of our podcast is just absolutely blowing up. For the video version, you can find us on Facebook and YouTube. We were just talking about the impeachments happening right now between Newsom, Cuomo, and Trump. So we're going to move on to digital exile. One of the big fallouts from the 2020 campaign was, of course, the censorship and deplatforming of conservatives, including the president, over at Facebook, Twitter, I'm sure even Instagram. We continue to see many instances of that happening. Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, I think, was recently suspended from Twitter. I'm not sure if he's been banned permanently or not. But we continue to see this, and I have actually seen a difference, or maybe it's perceptive, but just being on Twitter, it just seems different. It seems like, again, the engagement that's happening, the conversation that's happening, again, I think, as not only they continue to censor and deplatform more people, but also as they continue to, push people out, well, then other people are going to leave, and so it's one of these things where now conservatives, Republicans are looking for kind of a new platform where they're going to be able to express themselves and promote their agendas, their candidates, their viewpoints. Of course, Parler early on was an early favorite, being that there were many conservatives that were involved in the development of that platform. I've heard now, haven't looked into it, but that Parler is now back online after being offline, I think, for well over a month at least. And I like it. It doesn't look great. It's a little clunky, but where I've actually seen a lot of promise, not that the censorship gauntlet can't come down eventually, but where I think it's going to be a little bit more of an open platform for free speech is going to be Clubhouse. What do you guys think in regards to, again, all the deplatforming and censorship that's been going on in the digital space?
Well, let's put it this way, and I might be a counter here, but I really could not care less. I mean, there was the First Amendment before social media existed, before Mark Zuckerberg woke up in his dorm room with an idea. There will be First Amendment protections after social media, and social media is run by private entities now. Does that mean they should get any protection from the government? No, that should go away, and they should be forced to play by the same rules as everybody else. But we also have no right to free speech on these platforms. Do I think it's bad business on their part? Absolutely. I'm going
to disagree with you. I got to disagree with you here.
Woke mob so often, and end up having that end well. At the end of the day, though. Parler looks more and more like it's every other company. Their board acted like the board of any company would have acted and fired a CEO who they essentially canceled him. I'm not certain, but any organization that Dan Bongino is on the board of, I'm not so certain is legitimate to begin with. So, and to your point, Johnny, with Clubhouse, I think the way that it can avoid the kind of censorship and deplatforming issues is that everything that's on there is said live. There's no mechanism for storage where then they can say, oh, all right, well, we didn't like what you said. We're going to delete it now. We didn't like what you typed or what you said, we disagree with or we think is incorrect. We're going to take it off our platform. It exists in the moment in a way that, a lot of other platforms don't. I think it's still, it's much cleaner than Parler. It's not the same sort of program. It's not the same sort of idea even. But it certainly is an opportunity for people to get together, to gather, to speak, to share their mind, to talk about really anything they want. And it's done in such a way that it's, I think it's naturally protected from the overlords, as you put it.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, listen, here's the thing. I think that it absolutely should be free speech. I mean, granted, it's a digital format, but at one time, the newspapers were our mechanism for speech. Look, if the system you create allows people to speak their mind, it allows them to have their own space. Look, I agree with Desantis. I agree with the director of Florida Consumer Protection, what they've done here. I think absolutely we should be suing their pants off, that we need to be promoting free speech. Look, every single newspaper out there absolutely is bound by you have to allow somebody the freedom of speech. I mean, this is a major topic like hundreds of years ago when we created the nation, right? Here's the thing. And I pay a lot of money to Facebook. A lot of us pay a lot of money for this platform. It's not a free platform, okay? So, and I mean, I think my Facebook bill is over $1,500, maybe $2,000 monthly, okay? So the fact that I don't, we should be allowed freedom of speech on this platform. It doesn't matter whether they created it. It doesn't matter who prints the newspaper. If you're willing to pay money to say what you want to say, you should be willing. You should have the right to say it. And a lot of us do pay for these platforms. These platforms. This isn't Mark's bulletin board service for free, and he can control who comes on and comes off. Not at all. This is a company that charges for advertisement, just like a newspaper charged for advertisement. And look, we're not North Korea. I mean, if you want North Korea, fine, go with that idea. That's great. But I'm going to say this. I'm not going to move over to Parler or Clubhouse. No, I promote Ron DeSantis, and let's continue suing their pants off. Let's do whatever we have to do to force freedom of speech on these platforms.
Well, and just to jump in for a second, I'm going to disagree a little bit. I mean, the First Amendment doesn't protect your freedom of speech. It protects you being encroached upon by the government when you say something that the government might find offensive or somehow objectionable. There is no freedom of speech protection for Facebook and for Twitter. Period. It doesn't exist. If you want to say that getting a vaccine will cause you to grow horns, and Facebook now has announced that they're going to delete your comments and post something over top of it, that's fine. But nobody is stopping you from walking out into a crowded street, probably with or without a mask on, and saying, don't get a vaccine, you're going to grow horns. There's nothing stopping you from sharing your mind. And again, there is no First Amendment protection for these platforms. It's one of those, it's free market. You don't like it, move on.
I agree.
It's frustrating as somebody who, conservatives, we always want to say we're the small government people, right? We are the people that say small government is what we want, less government is a good thing, unless we can use it to enforce our will on a private company that we don't like because they said bad things about us and acted in an inappropriate way. And then we should get the government involved. So I don't know. There's a just massive tinge of hypocrisy in all of this that kind of just drives me nuts. As somebody who uses Facebook and Twitter to consume information and advertises for my clients and spends money there as well, if conservatives aren't there and Republicans aren't there, I won't spend my clients' money there. We'll find somewhere else to do it. But if they are, you better believe we're still putting money into Facebook and Twitter, because if I can reach the people that are voting on our side of the aisle for primary elections, it's absolutely going to happen. But I just do not understand the argument of let's slap these companies around. If we want to remove all the protections that they have, and I think it's Section 230, I think it's called.
Right. Yeah.
Correct. If you want to remove those,
bingo. Exactly. If you want to remove the protection,
change the law to protect, to basically not give them an advantage anymore, then great. If you want to hit them with an antitrust lawsuit because there's only a couple of them, do it. That's within the law, but there is no constitutional protection for what they're doing.
Yeah,
I have to agree. I think.
Go ahead, Anibal.
I think we've gone way far off the conservative Republican talking points when we're just constantly trying to score points in regards to hitting Facebook and Alphabet and some of the other ones because we don't like what they're doing. Now, I agree that in regards to what Florida is going to do with the consumer protection, you should be given the right to allow companies, if you want to give the company your data, then you should be aware of that happening. And if there's a monetary connection attached to it, then the individual should be getting that monetary value because they're paying for the data that you're providing and giving it and selling that data to other companies. And you should get a portion of that money, and you should be allowed to opt out of that if you want to opt out, the same way you're able to opt out for getting phone calls at 7:30 at night from telemarketers. And that there's a reason why we have those in the books now. I completely agree with Brock that Section 230 needs to be reviewed, and it needs to be removed. These individuals are no longer the public square. They should be seen as newspapers, and when something happens like that, they should be forced to have a retraction when they're doing something inappropriately. And if they're going to not, and again, if I was Parler, I would sue the pants off of some of the other websites, because at the end of the day, they're saying they were a deep platform because the allegations that what happened on January 6th was being done through Parler, which is very not the case. You can see it on Twitter and on Facebook as well, but yet they were the ones that were signaled out, and they were the ones that were forced to close basically last minute. So I would agree. I agree with Brock. I also understand where Cherry is coming from, but I don't think it's the proper argument to have in regards to what's going on and talking about free speech. That's not where I think we should be going. I will say a Parler is probably going to be like the guy sitting in front of Tiananmen Square with a tank about to roll across his chest, because it's very difficult to compete with other platforms that are giants in the system.
Yeah, look, I mean, to Brock's point, and if we look at what happened, well, two things, really. If we look at what's happened politically since social media became a factor in politics, right? We were way behind the ball in 2008. I mean, nobody in the Republican Party and the higher-ups were taking it seriously. John McCain made very little to no effort, to leverage social media as a platform, as a way to reach voters. You fast forward, and then we did a little bit better in 2012, and then you again, progressively, you saw one of the main legacy points for Reince Priebus. Anybody who is that deep into the weeds into Republican politics knows that he invested millions into a national database, to help them win federal elections, and it's part of the reason why I think we've been so successful federally, is because they invested millions of dollars in a digital infrastructure that has helped them win elections and gather data.
Still paying dividends. That is still paying dividends now.
No, exactly right. And so in the same token, Republicans and conservative entrepreneurs need to make the investment to develop platforms where, again, they can control the narrative, and they can control, if you want it to be a free speech platform, then great, let's make a free speech platform. If you want to make a conservative leaning platform, then let's do that. But you can't sit here and cry wolf, and as Brock said, still be the party of small government when you want the government to come down on Twitter and Facebook and all these other entities as other countries have for their censorship. But to that extent, about 230, they are publishers. They are no longer platforms. And the easiest non-political way to defeat that issue is by the simple fact that they create their own content. If you go onto Facebook and you go into their video section, they create their own content. If you go onto YouTube, Google creates their own content. And so they are publishers. They pay
Correct.
People to
Yep.
create. They pay people to create content, and they create their own content, and so they are publishers through and through. And I think that's why they need to be reclassified and revisited as, again, technology continues to change. Now,
and Jonny, just to talk about Parler for a minute, I mean, they didn't get deplatformed themselves.
Right.
They got caught off guard by the fact that their suppliers of cloud space and their server farms were liberals, right? And so they had to take the time to get organized and figure out what was going to happen and where they were going to get the needed infrastructure in order to run their platform. But let's be honest about Parler. It is a niche site, which is fine, but if it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never going to replace Facebook, and it doesn't have enough activity on it right now for us to even advertise on it. But no one's ever really going to use it. This is where I do agree with you. It does suck. No one's on it. I'm not on it. No one's on it. You know, a few French right-wing people are on it. Great, that's awesome. But you know, I think that here's where I will agree. We absolutely need to reclassify Facebook. They're more of a publisher now. Since they're controlling their content, then they absolutely need to. They don't need to have the protections that they have right now.
That solves a lot of problems. If you're able to figure that out and get the Biden administration to remove 230 from the situation, then that's what's going to work out. Laura Hartman said something great earlier in the comment section, and she says that the simple responsibility for what I say and do online, and it is a platform that hosts my comments, is not responsible for it. And that is simply what needs to happen. I think people will feel much more comfortable as soon as, and again, if the government has to step in, it needs to step in. But removing 230 no longer allows these platforms to be able to be so lackadaisical when it comes to their approach to removing people and removing their content. If you're going to start removing, which means that you are now creating a space and creating an environment, then you need to have that removed so that you're able to fully go into that sphere. But it is very difficult to compete with a corporation that has a billion, 2 billion plus people on it, and for you to do business somewhere else.
Yeah, look.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, if it were a better product, more people would use it. I mean, it's going to show, and Johnny's been in this space, you know, for more than a decade now. But at the end of the day, it has to be something people will adopt. It has to be a good product. It has to be a solid user experience. And part of it just isn't that.
Right.
I mean, heck, you're going to get a better experience on Nextdoor talking about, you know, whether or not the family next door lost their dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so
I love that website. I have no problem going on that site. I think it's hilarious watching what's happening across the street and everything else. I will pivot, though, to Clubhouse. And the reason why I will pivot to that is because I agree that it is a live broadcast of the conversations. However, people are already going to start archiving that to be able to use that against conservatives or other people of free thinking, for them to, and that allows for the cancel culture to continue. Because the same way that Snapchat was like, oh, it's only there for 15 seconds or 5 seconds, then it goes away. No, people were recording it, and now you see have ridiculous Snapchat stories. Yeah. But that's what's going to happen.
You guys are all going in the wrong direction. Let me say this. You realize that Facebook content, the people that run the algorithms of Facebook design the whole system to keep you engaged. They intentionally take the things that you like by analyzing your devices, analyzing what you do, by using data from like Nielsen and company, and various sources to analyze you and to put in front of you what you're most likely to view. It's an advertising source. They don't actually, all these things that we're talking about are kind of like the real goal of Facebook is to keep you on Facebook all the time. And that's why it's more engaging, because the algorithms and things are designed so that you're constantly on it, that you're clicking it, that you're addicted. They're creating an addiction just like sugar or crack.
Raise your hand if you've ever posted a Snapchat story.
I'll say
all right.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, I have, again, for marketing reasons. I've obviously need to be familiar with what these platforms do, how they operate. But I'll tell you, I've had my account now for I don't know, maybe a couple of years, and I never post to it. I mean, I'll check in to see what certain friends are posting from time to time, but I just don't. I don't really get it. I don't really enjoy it. I don't really see the value in it. I don't even like watching some of the well-produced content on there. I mean, because they've inundated it with ads already. And so anybody that has a popular channel on Snapchat, I mean, you can't watch a 2-3 minute video without getting 3 or 4 ads in the meantime. And so to me, it's just, I think it's going to be a player for quite some time, but I don't expect it to be around with the longevity of a Facebook or even a Twitter. And in that regard, and I've said this, some people don't necessarily agree with me, but I think Clubhouse could easily become, one of the top 3, definitely a top 5 social media platform, because people are actually engaging with each other. And, my biggest gripe with Twitter is that people don't really engage with one another anymore. It's just not, it's more about people, it's having a one-way conversation, just sharing their own content or their own viewpoints. They're not really engaging with, there's not a lot of conversation taking place. Whereas with Clubhouse, you can certainly see people in these rooms actually having dialogue, about whatever their room or their club is about. And I think politically, as elected officials and candidates kind of catch up to it, I think it's going to be a great platform to mobilize volunteers, to gain momentum for a campaign, and it's going to again allow people to. The one thing that Clubhouse, I think the biggest advantage is accessibility, right? Because early Twitter, if you remember, back 07, 08, if there was a celebrity on Twitter, you could message them and they would message you back. Like, you were actually dialoguing with people that were seemingly and previously unattainable. The same thing is happening right now with Clubhouse. I mean, you've seen there's a lot of celebrities jumping on there, a lot of thought leaders. You're seeing guys like Grant Cardone, Gary Vaynerchuk, celebrities, Lindsay Lohan, MC Hammer, Vanilla Ice, and you're seeing the list grow in relevance. And you could be in one of these rooms with these celebrities, with these thought leaders, and actually ask them a question and have a conversation with them. And that was one of the nice things about Twitter in its early days that I think has gone by the wayside, that Clubhouse has seemed to recapture it. And that's why I think it's going to be around for a long time.
Just a couple of nights ago, Gary Vee, who I know you just mentioned, Johnny, was in a room with less than 120 people.
Yeah. And that's somebody that they pay thousands of dollars to go see.
Thousands of dollars before the pandemic.
Yeah. Thousands of dollars to be in a ballroom with 1,000 people.
Right. Yeah. And you can easily jump in there and ask him a question, and have a dialogue with him.
Yep. The beauty of it will be how it becomes as more and more people get on, as it becomes more political. I mean, even in the comment sections on Facebook, it gets malicious and it gets very ugly very quickly, because people are so negative because of these keyboard warriors and not having that real interaction. Now that we're in a pandemic situation, people, I would assume, would be a lot less willing to be vocal, mean, because you can see someone else on the Clubhouse. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Clubhouse looks like. I think it's not going to be a safe space for people and free thought. I think people are still going to go after individuals that they don't agree with when it comes to the topics that they come up with or the conversations. I mean, we already see what happened with whether the New York Times or the New York Post having Ben Shapiro on as a guest editor. I mean, they got almost crucified with their internal staff. And these things are happening all over the country. So it is becoming an issue, and it could becoming an issue of how these platforms are going to be treating people with different thought. You should still host, you should still have their books published, and just because one or two people in your office complain doesn't mean anything. Hector Gonzalez made a comment earlier that could someone like Donald Trump have their own platform? I think it is grossly inappropriate for Donald Trump to try to build his own platform. I don't think it's necessary.
Oh, come on, no! Man, I would love it. If Donald Trump had his own platform, that would be awesome.
Why?
That would be so entertaining. I would be entertained. You know, one thing Donald Trump has definitely done, he's definitely a great entertainer, okay? And I think that's a lot of the reason why he won the presidency.
And that's a lot of reasons why he lost the presidency.
Well, such is
life.
Well,
you remember Andrew mentioned that he didn't think he lost, so...
Yeah.
Hey, well, you know, we all have our opinion.
Well,
am I still allowed? Is this North Korea? Am I allowed to have an opinion, or do I go to jail tomorrow because I think that? I don't know. The federal government might come and take me away. I mean, welcome to North Korea.
I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but one thing Donald Trump will not do is sit quietly and go quietly
No.
into the night as many wish that he would. He will launch.
No, that's good. I want him to be out there.
Yeah, no, look, he'll launch either a TV channel or a podcast or a magazine. Like, he's going to do something. And it's going to be, it'll be big, and it'll probably be successful because now he has a very strong and very large base of support. Like, it's no longer just about celebrity as he used to be. I think he has a more permanent base of support. Now that he's delved into the world of politics, that is going to support him in probably just about anything he does. Look at the effect that his presidency had on the Trump hotels. The Trump Hotel in D.C. became kind of the de facto headquarters for the Republican Party and Republicans. Yep. And to that effect, I think, we're going to see something from Trump. I don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. But, those things obviously take time and a lot of money to execute. But I think it's only a matter of time. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see it, maybe not by midterms, but certainly by the next presidential election. We'll have seen something come to fruition from President Trump and of course, him leveraging his now political base of support. So
I love it. With that in the issue, I do agree with Jerry. I think having the Trump Hotel in DC was almost like Mecca. When you as a Republican in going to the Capitol, you would be around other Republicans, and you felt safe. You saw a lot of red hats, and you enjoyed the space that the Trump Hotel offered, and you enjoyed the conversation. Again, I have multiple stories of multiple bottles being opened and shared in the restaurant with other fellow Republicans, and we felt very comfortable talking about Republican things, and that's something that you don't see in many places around the country. I will also say that the second acquittal of Trump gives him a large platform anywhere he wants. He doesn't need to create. The reason why he doesn't need to create a new one is because anyone he picks to be on will automatically get 5 to 10 million people to sign up for it just because he's on there, because people want to hear his opinion. And the Democrats, I don't know what the long game is for the Democrats, because at the end of the day, if they keep on bringing him up in conversation and keep on trying to sue him and keep on doing that, it's just going to piss people off more and more and more, where you're going to have him probably run for a second term if you continue to put him out there. I know. I personally feel that he shouldn't run for a second term. I feel that he should become a kingmaker and enjoy playing golf, which I think is probably what's going to happen.
No, I think playing golf. Guys, you check this out. Rush Limbaugh, as sad as it is, right? He is not going to be with us very much longer, and that's going to open up a huge audience that didn't exist before. That's going to be completely open, and I feel like some kind of Trump media can fill that space. I mean, honestly, I as many years as I've listened to Rush, I've never seen Rush love a president, any president, Republican or otherwise, until Trump. And I feel like the Trump followers are the Rush followers. So I feel like a natural progression would be take those people, AM radios on the way out. Now we're listening on iHeartRadio and such. Take those people, now become the base for the new Trump media platform, whatever that is. And absolutely, either one of the hot, sexy daughters or one of the guys or Trump himself. 2024, I give it a 75% chance one of them runs for 2024.
I give zero chance that any of them is going to run for president in 2024. I think it's an absolute ridiculous for anyone of the family to think that they have the same kind of coattails as President Trump did. And at the second time,
they will run for office, but not for.
They will, yeah, they will run for office, but they will not.
Marco Rubio,
guys, Bush. Look at Bush and his son. I mean,
yeah, that became governors. That became governors, and then ran for the presidency. You have to. There's a reason why there's an order to this. I do not think we're going to see someone coming out of the woodworks again. Trump was probably once in a lifetime situation in regards to having that occur. Also, having the Trump base, it's fine, and he'll win the primary. He won't win the presidency. He will not win the general election if he continues with the rhetoric. People are done with the rhetoric, and they want something else.
I think we'll definitely see. Go ahead, Brian.
As an active member of the party, I just want there to be a different voice. I mean, as someone, again, whose job it is to elect Republicans, it was not easier, despite all the new people to the Republican Party, it was not easier under President Trump. It was much more difficult. Yeah. And we need a voice that can bring people together They don't have to be a moderate, but they need to conduct themselves in a way that brings people together. President Trump did many, many, many great things.
Yes.
But, go to sleep, would you please? It's there are so many young, energetic, different, well-spoken, established, dignified members of the Republican Party that could run. Heck, we could have another one of those god-awful 15-person primaries. But when you
I'm okay with it.
You have people like a Nikki Haley.
Yeah.
People like, even God forbid a Ted Cruz, but people who are established in, exemplary at what they do. A Mike Pompeo, for example. People that are really good at what they do. They're young, they're energetic, they bring a different, mindset. They have experience. I just think there's too many opportunities as a Republican Party to strengthen ourselves to kind of keep one foot in the grave.
I agree with Brock. We have a very large bench. We have a very large bench when it comes to the Republicans that could run for 2024. And the fact that we have 2 female governors, we have senators, we have LGBT people that could easily run for the president. And I would love to see another 15 to 16% primary, because that allows for the networks and everyone else for us to be able to talk about the conservative and the conservative movement. And as Hector said, I want someone that's going to be able to focus on kitchen table issues. The Republican Party has fallen away from that, and the reason why we're only 5 votes away from taking over the House is because local parties focused on local races, and that's how we won a lot of congressional seats. Miami, New York, California, seats that we were never supposed to win. We did because the Republican narrative still works in the local narrative portions, and we have to get back to that so we can take back the House and Senate in 22 so that we have an easier run in 24.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I think that the pushing, thinking that, hey, we're going to walk away from Trump is not just Trump the brand. Trump is an ideology, and I think what's actually going to happen is the Republican Party is about to split, and there are people that are on the the kind of the old school Republican way of thought process, and there are people that are kind of this new Trump thought process. And how many of those people agree with the things that Trump did and the American First platform, and how many of those people just are in love with Trump himself? I don't know, but I think there's an ideology difference, and I think that if the Republican Party doesn't wake up and realize that there's been a huge shift in ideology after this, that it just kind of falls apart and becomes something else.
What shift of ideology? I am very confused when people say things like that, and they make comments about ideology of the Republican Party. We survived the Tea Party movement. We've survived other movements in the past. And if you want to split the Republican Party up, then be perfectly happy having Democratic control for the next 20 years, because the Republican Party can't keep themselves together.
Anibal, Trump is a product of the Tea Party movement. I mean, he is.
Yes, exactly. He's right.
You look here in Florida, Rick Scott and Marco Rubio were products of the Tea Party movement, and because, again, it was a fired up, it was a conservative base of the party, that wanted to see not only new blood in the party, but they also wanted people that had business experience and business acumen, and that weren't entrenched in lobbyist and other political games. And so, the reason Trump was successful is because, again, he wasn't a politician. And when you are talking about a shift in ideology, I mean, look, the one thing that he got Republicans away from was talking about social issues. Now, does that mean that Trump didn't support the pro-life movement? Of course he did. But he was also certainly more towards the middle on LGBTQ issues than maybe any prior Republican president. And he got us away from being pigeonholed on social issues and made the conversation about foreign policy, made the conversation about the economy, made the conversation about global trade. But
that's nothing that a Republican is going to fight against. I don't understand the comments that people are making in regard. Now, I will say,
because your traditional Republicans your traditional Republicans get wrapped up in the social issues, and then all of a sudden, every debate and every topic becomes about being pro-life, or it becomes about marriage between a man and a woman.
That's not what's going to split the party. That's not what's splitting the party. What's splitting the party is people. That's not splitting the party.
Right.
What's splitting the party? What's splitting the party is the love affair people have with Trump.
No. He hit the nail on the head. Listen, I want to tell you something. If a guy and a guy want to get married, get married. I am not a traditional Republican. Okay, I am by any means definitely not. I'm a libertarian who identifies more with the Republican Party than with the Democrat Party. But when it comes to social issues, I love my gay friends, and if they want to be married and have the same rights as we do, absolutely they should. And I think that we have got these quote conservative Christian values. I mean, things have got to change. Even the churches are allowing gays in the churches now. The Catholic Church
I don't know where you guys are coming at this. I've been attending all of these HREC meetings, and they have not had one issue with new gay
You're attending the old HREC.
These are some of the most conservative Republicans that have been allowing LGBT members into the organization. With
allowing. That's the problem.
That is not splitting.
Yes,
I don't see that's
that is the problem.
Anibal, you and I both know that accepting and then truly elevating or considering them an equal is a completely different thing. You're not going to see them elevate anybody that is LGBTQ, or in some cases, as you and I both know, a minority into leadership positions.
The reason, Brock, I want to hear what Brock has to say.
I mean, we all have spent too much time amongst the party, right? So if you look at, registered Republicans, people who identify as conservative Republicans across the country, the evangelical Republican base is about 15% of that group. So, did Trump, long term, the biggest influence Trump will have will be broadening our party's base, bringing Hispanic families into the mix, bringing in Blue Dog Democrat union workers, people that weren't there before. That said, there is absolutely nothing, and the Republican Party is in a place where it can't come back from liberalizing on those issues, and probably rightfully so, especially as the party gets younger and younger and younger. But at the end of the day, there's absolutely no difference in, 99% of the policy that a president deals with, or congressional candidates deal with, that is not, within a couple percentage points of where it was in 2015. Maybe the focus is slightly different, but let's be honest. We can say Trump did nothing to hurt the pro-life agenda, and I'm of the, believe it or not, 42 years old, the younger batch of Republicans, but he was a Democrat. He was the pro-life Democrat until maybe 2.5, 3 years before he got elected. So to think he's some dyed-in-the-wool conservative Christian, he was friendly to Christian conservatives because he needed Christian conservatives.
I think he was a registered Republican longer than a lot of you guys realize, but I don't have the statistics in front of me, and maybe so I can pull them up or something. But I've heard that a bunch of times that he was a Democrat. He was a Democrat. I mean, he had to. He was in New York. I mean, so he got along with everybody.
If I run a Republican who was 5 years ago a Democrat for any public office, and they get a primary, they're done.
Yeah,
they're absolutely done.
Also, any Republican that would donate money to Democrats would also be done in the primary system. Yeah. What brought Trump into the forehead of everyone was because he has been able to use the media the way he wants to use the media for the last 40 years, and he was able to use it in a way that spoke to so many people. The way I see the Republican Party today of having the fractures that they do is of those Republicans that want to have nothing to do with President Trump because they want to move on, and those that still want him somewhat inside the party. That's where I see the split coming, because it's not going to be an outside group that opens up a fissure within the Republican Party. it will be Trump himself. If Trump says that he's leaving the Republican Party and wants something else, that will be what splits the party, not the ideology of what's going on into the weeds. It's Trump himself that will split the party if he chose to do it.
And Anibal, I think it's not even
take, obviously.
I think at some point in time, the people that were engaged Republicans before Trump will settle back into a role, even if they really truly fully adopted Trump. They'll settle back into a party that makes sense to win, to advance the conservative agenda across the country. The people, what is it? 2015. The people that weren't part of the party in 2015 and then came on board because of Trump. I think that's a different discussion that we'll need to have within the party about, can those folks be adopted into what looks like the future of the Republican Party, or and maybe Andrew's right on this. Maybe that branch splits off. What that looks like and whether or not that kind of odd coalition of people would actually hurt the Republican Party, I think it's a complete complete question mark at this point in time. But I mean, this is not pro-life versus pro-choice. This is not gay rights versus banning gay marriage. That's not what this is. This is the people that came to the party specifically and got involved because of Trump versus the rest of everyone who had been there all along. And them, or they go their separate way.
Okay, well, Jonny, I think said something more along the lines of what I would think. Look, you guys think that these people came because of Trump. I don't think so. I think that Trump is a result of the Tea Party movement. When I say the ideology shift, what I mean, I'll give you an example. And I use the gay thing a lot just because it's easy to use. But for example, a lot of the 21, 22-year-old girls in the dating scene right now, they're bisexual. A lot. So I don't know what the percentages is, but people have kind of a different mindset now. Weed is kind of openly smoked everywhere. It's generally accepted as much as a cigarette. In fact, cigarettes are on the way out. Most people don't even smoke cigarettes, but they prefer weed, marijuana, or whatever. People just have a different mindset. The younger generation thinks differently, and I think that more libertarian mindset when it comes to social issues is going to change if the Republican Party doesn't adapt and change on some of these social issues. I'm not talking about the fiscal or anything like when it comes to being a little bit more conservative regarding our tax dollars. I think that we were going in the right direction with renegotiating policies with China. I think we need to keep the Keystone Pipeline open. All these things that the Republicans kind of align themselves with are great, but when it comes to social issues, that's the disconnect, and that's where we lose so many people. We lose so many. We align ourselves correct when it comes to money, but when it comes to social issues, that's where we're and if we it's kind of like, I'll give you the Corvette as a product example. They made the same kind of front engine car for 40, 50, 60 years, right? And then when they decided to make the Corvette a mid-engine car, it disenfranchised a large percentage of the Corvette buyers. But here's the interesting thing. The average Corvette buyer is 65 years old, right? So you have to look at who is the new generation. What does the new generation believe? Because we're a party of the people. We represent the people. And so we have to look at what the new generation, what is their ideology, what is their take on social issues, where do they stand on social issues, and how can we integrate this new ideology, which is really just a libertarian ideology, a more libertarian ideology, into what we call conservatism, or where the Republicans align themselves.
Our social platform is not the reason why we lost this last election. The reason why we lost this last election is because of soccer moms in the suburbs, and actually less white citizens voting for Trump this cycle. We need to make sure that we know the audience that we're talking to, and that we're able to talk into their positions. We won Florida and other parts of California and Texas because of the Hispanic conversation that Trump was having very good at, and being that kind of leader that every Hispanic enjoys a nice dictator every once in a while. But what's going to happen?
You're right that's not why we lost in 2020. But the reason we won in 2016 is because Trump talked about the things that were important to Americans at the time, which was the economy, which was unnecessary and ongoing wars. And he talked about, again, all the bad deals that we had, trade-wise, globally.
But we are in a new world now. If the pandemic wasn't here, would Trump have a second term? In a heartbeat. The economy was going great and everything else. But we are in a different world. 2022 is going to be a different kind of conversation. I think a lot of the American public was just tired of the rhetoric that was coming out of the White House and wanted someone else to be able to push it.
That's not it, guys. That's not it. It's not the rhetoric from the White House.
Lost.
That's not it at all.
Andrew, I understand your position.
It's not it.
Andrew,
you don't even know what I'm going to say next.
Andrew,
not it at all, though.
The reason why we lost is because we couldn't get soccer moms and other people in the suburbs to be okay with someone having the rhetoric that Trump had. If you want to argue that point, you can.
Hold on,
but the polls don't say otherwise.
Okay, and you know why soccer moms don't like the quote Republican narrative? Because we don't know how to
It wasn't the Republican narrative, Andrew. It was Trump.
Let me finish the thought. It's because we, as Republicans don't know how to deal with race as an issue. We don't know how to deal with the gay, lesbian, the social aspects, where people are. So the Democrats have painted us, and they've been doing this for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They paint us as a racist, evil group. Yet we're not. We're very inclusive, and what we need to do is figure out how to alter our advertising so that we identify as non-racist, that we identify as
I'm sorry, that's not true.
Inclusive.
I'm sorry, that completely is not true. And the reason why I can say that is because 2020 election, we had the most LGBT voting for the Republicans, most blacks, most Hispanics voting for the Republican Party. Now, can we do better?
It's not those people.
We can always do better.
White people.
We can always do better, but it wasn't the Republican the policies that made white people not vote for us. It was the rhetoric coming out of Trump that did not let them vote for us.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Jonny is 100% right. When he laid out why we voted for Trump as a party and why the country elected Trump in 2016, he's absolutely right. He had the conversations nobody in power was going to have over the last 30 years with people who didn't get to talk to power. Out of work, factory workers and union reps and truck drivers and coal miners and these people that had just completely, it's like they didn't exist in the United States.
Right.
And, everything that Jonny said was 100% right. And we didn't talk about 100% of those issues this last election.
No, and I said this in previous... Sorry, go ahead, Brock.
No, I was just going to say, it may not be what Trump said, but it is certainly our failure to secure the White House was because of what Trump didn't allow the party to say because of all the oxygen being taken out of the room. There was a fantastic lightning in a bottle in 2016, and for unknown reasons, we didn't just replicate what we did in 2016.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, if there was an opposite of what he did in 2016, being the people's president, right? He did the other thing. Let's see how many people we can run down a hole.
Well, and Trump didn't have a hated enemy. You know what I mean? Like he did in 2016. And so again, you made the point that I made many times on this podcast, which is that Trump didn't run on the things that he achieved. He never mentioned his wins, his successes, all the things that he promised he would do and did, which many politicians can't do. He had a record that he could have run on, and he didn't.
And Jonny,
I would agree with that.
What it really comes down to, I think, is message discipline. Can we think of a time where there was a successful piece of news that came out of the White House that he didn't immediately step on the message?
Right. Yeah.
Like, if we have the best job numbers in the history of the Republic for African Americans, for women, for Asians, especially young black men, you'd think we'd get more than a day or two out of that, but we couldn't because Trump did what Trump does and absorb all the oxygen again into whatever kind of thing was happening that day. And the press is naturally inclined to they'll abandon anything if they can talk badly about the president, right? So at some level we could have talked about those things. Truth is, in 2016 Trump was the only person on the Republican side that could have won. That's my belief. And in 2020 he is the person who lost because of what you're talking about. If any other president had the successes he had, it wouldn't have been even a close election. But there was so much noise, so much white noise, so much ancillary shrapnel at any given point in time, we never got to what the thing is. Talk about what the thing is. That's all that matters. The thing is the economy. The thing is, people going back to work. Talk about those things. We never even got remotely close to that in a 2-year stretch.
Yeah. Well, guys, we certainly got off on quite a tangent from the topic, and we're already a little over an hour and only hit about half our topics. So I want to thank you again for watching the Yard Sign, and again, thanks to Andrew Cherry, Brock Mikosky, and Anibal Cabrera. And look, to just basically put a cherry on that sundae, Trump made Hillary the most hated person in politics in 2016, and Democrats flipped the script on him and made him the most hated man in politics in 2020, and that's why he lost. And that's where you and I disagree, Andrew, but it wasn't a repudiation of Republican policy, it was a repudiation of Trump, and they vilified him successfully. To Brock's credit, for every positive piece of news that came out of the White House, Trump then followed it up by, again, creating a new narrative about something he said that he shouldn't have, or, and it was just a constant battle. The media was just constantly chasing the next story because there were so many. I don't, obviously we're kind of well past the 1 hour mark, so I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole on Biden and DeSantis. But for those of you who do follow me on Facebook, you saw that, I think this is more about DeSantis being a threat in 2024 with Biden possibly, or considering, or, at least putting out there that he might enact some sort of travel restrictions to and from Florida, in regards to the COVID numbers. Meanwhile, he willfully ignores California and New York. Now, some say that he was including California in that announcement as well. So is this about DeSantis possibly being a candidate for president, or is this him just picking on DeSantis because he's so popular and succeeding here in Florida? What do you guys think?
I would say both. Honestly, I think it's a potential 2024 run, and also the very much popularity of the governorship here in Florida. I will say this: if it comes to fruition that this is a policy that they're thinking of even of implementing, which I don't think they will. I think this was again a test balloon that they threw out there to see where it would land, and it landed like a lead balloon almost immediately, to the point to where the state would revolt in a situation that he would even attempt to try to automatically put us down as Florida. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. The number of people that are moving here is growing exponentially every single week. The number of companies that are moving is growing so quickly in the South. It's just a different world. Talking to friends that are in New York and California, it is a completely different world. You're seeing the country, I don't want to say the country split into two, but it's two realities. The fact that they cannot eat outside, cannot eat inside or outside, the fact that they're still being barred from their homes, the fact that children haven't gone to school is absolutely ridiculous. Is the concept of our children not being able to go to school and not get a proper education is going to cause lasting damage, and I think it will do lasting damage to the Democrat Party.
It really comes down to, regardless of what the reason that Biden didn't, we'll never know what was kicking around Kamala Harris's mind when she decided that was the policy that they were going to announce. But regardless of whether he was coming directly for Ron DeSantis, or it was just bad policy, or maybe there was an issue with Florida versus New York, who knows? But what I do know is he created the first candidate for 2024 that actively had a reason to lead the horse race. He's going to be a top fundraiser, and he can fundraise off this issue for the next 3 months. And if he's not doing that, it's malpractice on the part of Ron DeSantis. I assume, knowing his team, that he is, and they're doing a solid job doing it. But he created a foil for Ron DeSantis.
Yep.
Somebody directly who becomes the Antichrist for Ron DeSantis and everyone who likes him. So it's a rallying cry. It's you can talk about my brother, or I can talk about my brother. You can't talk about Florida. It was just dumb. I mean, it hit the core of it. But I think this was the best thing politically that could have happened to Ron DeSantis right now.
Well, real quick, before we get to Andrew, Brock, on that note, and I want to also going to give a little more fuel for Andrew to fire up on. The fact is that Charlie Crist is potentially also looking at the governor's race, and so by comparison, some people are saying, well, if DeSantis gets reelected, which he in all likelihood would, in 2 years, then would it be wrong of him midterm as governor to then try to run for president in 24? And could that hurt him the way that it hurt Charlie Crist?
Gosh, Charlie Crist is an interesting character. It could, yeah. I mean, it depends on the success and then what would happen. I really hope we get to keep DeSantis. I don't think that it's time for him to run for president. Personally, I think he should just remain in his current position.
So see the 2 full terms all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brock?
Well, Jonny, I think the other thing too is I'm not entirely certain that the issues with Charlie Crist when he was governor had as much to do with him leaving after 2 years as it did with the way that he handled the office for the 2 years that he was there.
But it gave Republicans that did not like him a chance to, again, this was early Tea Party, a chance to paint him as a career politician, which he very much is, and again, looking ahead, let's say 4 years from now, you got a DeSantis now who has served in Congress, now served a full term as governor, and in the middle of a second term as governor, making now a run for president. Does he then become the de facto career politician, or do you think he's able to kind of brush that off his shoulder and still be a contender in 24? Or should he, roll the dice and see if, he has a chance in 28?
If he's at 53 to 55% approval rate, he'll be just fine.
Agreed. I think Matt Gaetz has already made a comment out in the public saying that if Ron DeSantis decides to run in 24, that he will back him in 24. This allows for a lot of openings. If Ron DeSantis decides to run, I think he gets the blessing of the previous 45. And if he gets the blessing of 45, I think that will sway a lot of the influence. I think Trump would rather be a kingmaker than run to be king again. He's already been president. He already has the statue. The library will be somewhere in South Florida where the Cubans will love him. And so it's going to be a great time in Florida. It's going to be a great time in Florida to be able to have the previous president here putting his support behind the governor. And I agree with Brock. I can talk about my brother all day long. When you come after my own brother, I'm going to come after you. And a lot of Floridians, Democrat and Republican and Independent, were very upset that the Biden administration was even inkling with the idea of putting travel sanctions in Florida. I think they woke up a giant when it comes to it. And watching how the governor has been handling the media is beautiful. I absolutely love it. Him drinking a beer at the Super Bowl and pushing back against the media is beautiful to continue to watch. And you get pride as a Floridian knowing that we made the right choice picking him, and that we'll make the right choice again in 2 years when he runs for governor, and God willing, if he runs for president.
Yeah, look, I'll say this really quick is that if not for the pandemic, I'm almost scared to think of how high Ron DeSantis' approval ratings would be. Because really, this pandemic has really only been the thing to kind of knock him down a notch. And even that, again, now as we are looking at having been in this pandemic for about a year, he looks to be coming out ahead of certainly all the major state politicians and governors that have been trying to navigate this situation.
Yeah, the decisions that he made to focus on those that were 65 or older and those that were in long-term care facilities. Again, we are the second largest population of those in those two categories. Focusing on that and allowing the state to continue to operate where people aren't losing their jobs. The fact that we're not at 10 to 15% unemployment in the state of Florida is has been something that will work in his benefit. Again, it didn't matter what his approval rating was 6 months ago, while the height of the pandemic and no one knew what was going on. It will be now that what is the benefits of what he did is because people are moving to the state, because businesses are moving here. They are showing that what Ron DeSantis did worked and is continuing to work.
All right, guys. We'll kind of cap that one, and I'm sure we'll be revisiting that topic. If the Biden administration continues to kind of go down that path. But like you said, I think they got a lot of pushback that they were probably not expecting. And so I think we may have heard the last of any travel restrictions to Florida. I don't think they expected the pushback that they got. Super Shenanigans. Let's end on kind of a fun note. Again, congratulations to our Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where our show originates, on becoming the Super Bowl champions here in the midst of a pandemic. The first Super Bowl championship team to host a Super Bowl as well. Man, as someone who born and raised in Miami, I actually got to work at a couple of Super Bowls myself. Again, it's unfortunate that again, we kind of cut off at the knees when it came to not only the Super Bowl experience but the celebratory experience, because this region would have just been bonkers. I think it would have just been unbelievable in a normal environment to have experienced a normal Super Bowl and a normal Super Bowl championship. But of course, now we see a softer side, if you will, of Tom Brady in celebrating versus his celebrations up in Boston. And then
we saw a drunker side of Tom Brady.
That's right. And then the daughter of the trophy, I guess, designer or maker, saying that she didn't...
Brady Gloss, yeah.
Yeah, she didn't agree with the way that Brady was handling the trophy, which, again, I think is... nobody cares. Look, he was in. We've seen far worse done with the Stanley Cup. So, to that extent, just real quick, if you guys want to share your thoughts on, what is now Tampa Bay, because of course, the Rays, the Rowdies, and the Tampa Bay Lightning Stanley Cup champions are to be included in that conversation.
First of all, the daughter of the person that nobody's ever heard of wants an apology from the GOAT. I think that could be classified as maybe overstepping just a bit.
Heck, if it had been Vince Lombardi's daughter, I would understand, but geez.
Honestly, I would have only been concerned if it was actually Vince Lombardi.
Hey, he was. Let's not forget, he was at the Super Bowl in as a hologram.
As a hologram, right? It's interesting though. The one takeaway I have of the, I don't know, we'll call it Trophy Gate because everybody loves a gate, is the fact that he was 3/4 of the way to being Captain Drunky Goat, right? Like he was well into the bag, and he still connected, no sweat on a completed pass.
Gronkowski,
it was a piece of beauty, right? Like.
It was not Gronkowski.
Was amazing.
No. If you look at the picture really closely, okay, because this is what fascinated me. Okay, the guy who caught the bulk of the trophy was not Gronkowski. If you look at Gronkowski, his hands, Gronkowski's hands are actually on the football part of the trophy. Like as if he had caught an actual football. Go back and watch the actual catch, and Gronkowski's hands are on the football portion of the trophy.
The immaculate reception.
Whereas the other player caught, I would say the bulk of it, right?
And it was almost a non-issue because he had to come from Disney World and was late. Let's be clear about what the important thing was here. But, it just shows you that Tom Brady can be literally asleep and throw a pass and connect it with somebody, right?
Oh, yeah. Also,
it can't be light.
No, it's not light. But I will say this. The pandemonium that occurred in the city was quite entertaining to watch. From the streets filled with YouTube students at Soho to downtown Tampa to the Channel Side, even Ybor City was absolutely
packed.
very little mask wearing, which is to the chagrin of the mayor of Tampa, that she was very upset and very disappointed of the amount of people that were not wearing masks. And hopefully we'll see what happens when it comes to them putting tickets out for those that were not wearing them. I think this just shows how much Florida doesn't care anymore.
We are the city that's represented by a pirate ship. Okay, we promote Ybor and all its debauchery. This is Tampa Bay. Okay, what do you expect? And an interesting fun fact: our numbers are actually decreasing when it comes to COVID. But just saying, I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying our numbers happen to be decreasing. But hey, look, no one really cares about the trophy creator or the daughter or whatever. What we care about is Tom Brady is the most awesome player in history, and I think he can kind of do whatever he wants.
I actually
and just to go political with this for a minute, the only person we care less about than the daughter of the creator of the trophy maker's wife or something is Jane Castor, who wants to act really, really upset that people didn't wear masks, probably while she wasn't wearing a mask, given her history. So let's just, tamp down your outrage, Mayor Castor, and why don't you just, go back to, whatever it is you weren't doing before the pandemic.
Oh yeah, the real fallout of this whole situation is, I would say, is actually the superintendent of Hillsborough County School System.
Yep.
He is getting a lot of pushback for not wearing a mask to begin with, and also
for about 30 seconds actually.
Just for being there, period.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. What are you doing at that parade when the bulk of your administration and teachers are still at school teaching children? Because the mayor decided to make it at 1 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock, where it was for the lightning. I think it was absolutely bullcrap, and I think they probably made it 1 o'clock because they wanted to make sure not many people showed up. And you know what? Thousands of people showed up, played hooky, and we're on the boats, we're on the shores, and we're in the buildings watching from above. So I think it was fascinating. I will say, in regards to the what's the problem with that one woman when she's talking about the trophy, my first thought was like, who is this bitch? I have no idea who she is. I don't care who she is. I don't care where she comes from. I don't want to know about this woman. She could be Karen for all I care. I'm over it. Get over it. I agree with Andrew. We are a pirate city. It's going to happen. It is what it is.
Well, and to your point about the superintendent, the worst part about his hypocrisy was not only the fact that he, took off his mask at some point while he was there, but that he was there in the first place after he sent an email the day before saying that he did not want any of his staff, faculty, to be present at the parade, and to do what's right for the students and to do what's right for the schools, and to stay home or stay at school, but not to come to the championship parade. And sure enough, not only was he there, but he had the audacity to give television interviews. And so there's plenty to be mad at that guy about, but that is obviously some icing on the cake.
I need him to figure out the financial budget for Hillsborough County Schools. It is a meteor that is about to hit, and it's going to be a disaster when they start having to close schools or merge them because they cannot pay for what's happening right now. Even after we gave them a few cents increases, and 3 schools got air conditioning units, it's an absolute farce.
Not to get off on a tangent, but now they're going to go build a memorial for some grave site that they build a school on top of.
I'm
they're probably
over
going to
it.
spend about 6 figures on that. But anyways, that's another show. The other thing that I found amusing was Brady talking directly to the mayor without wearing
a mask. Yeah.
And that there's even a city councilman, whom I will not mention, but is a friend of many of us on this show, who was also at the celebratory events without a mask, and took a picture with the goat with no mask. And that picture disappeared from Facebook real quick. And so it's just such complete nonsense. And obviously it didn't look great on the mayor's behalf, the fact that she, puts forth this mask ordinance that, and then still, has to face Tom Brady, who couldn't care less about what authority she does or doesn't have, and she has to be cool with it. What was she going to do? Was she going to arrest Tom Brady? Was she going to arrest the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
She
for
should.
Not wearing a mask?
She should try. I would love it. I would love for her to try. I would love it.
Yeah.
Tom Brady would become the quarterback of the Bucs and the mayor.
I was about to say exactly. He would be mayor.
Yeah.
Well, the good part is he would have had time in the drunk tank.
Yeah. So what I'm still scratching my head about is what the hell avocado tequila is. So
isn't that the worst thing you've ever heard of?
That sounds horrible.
And I don't think I want to know. So we may leave that one a mystery. But
there's only one thing tequila should be flavored like, and that's tequila.
That's right. So, all right. Thanks again to those good-looking guys right there. Let's see. Again, Andrew Cherry, Brock Mikosky, Anibal Cabrera. Sorry, Brock, I got a little graphic over your face right now. I'll go
That's cool.
in a second. Guys, thank you so much for the great conversation. Hit 90 minutes on the dot. Look at that.
Free Myanmar! Free Myanmar!
Sure. Yeah, we'll talk about that maybe next week, Anibal. But again, on behalf of those guys, we appreciate you for watching The Yard Sign. Don't forget to download, subscribe, like, comment, share, and catch the audio version of our podcast at the Tech Overlords over on Google, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and Audible. On behalf of those guys and myself, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time. So long.
All right, gentlemen.
Are we out?
We are out.